Thank you for watching Safe Haven Radio. Today, we're exploring a topic that touches so many of our lives, the exhausting cycle of overthinking small mistakes and how perfectionism keeps us trapped in mental loops that drain our energy and joy. If you've ever found yourself lying awake at night, replaying a minor error from earlier in the day, wondering if everyone noticed and judged you for it, please know that you're not alone. This experience is incredibly common, and more importantly, recent scientific breakthroughs have shown us that this pattern isn't a fixed part of who you are. It's actually a modifiable thinking habit that we can change together. Many of you may have experienced that sinking feeling when you realize you've made even the tiniest mistake. Perhaps you mispronounced a word in a meeting, sent an email with a typo, or forgot someone's name. For most people, these moments pass quickly, but for those of us who struggle with perfectionist overthinking, these small errors can trigger hours or even days of mental replay, self-criticism, and anxiety. You might find yourself creating elaborate scenarios about how this mistake will ruin your reputation, damage relationships, or prove that you're not good enough. This mental exhaustion from constantly analyzing and reanalyzing past events can leave you feeling drained, anxious, and unable to fully engage with the present moment. What I want you to understand today is that this tendency to overthink mistakes isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. Recent research has revealed it's actually a brain-based pattern that served a protective purpose at some point in your life, perhaps helping you avoid criticism or maintain high standards that felt necessary for acceptance or success. The wonderful news is that just as our brains learned this pattern, they can also unlearn it and develop healthier ways of processing mistakes. Professional support is always available if you need it, and there's no shame in seeking help. But today, let's explore together some scientifically backed approaches that have helped thousands of people find freedom from the tyranny of perfectionist overthinking. Take your time with this content, go at your own pace, and remember that even small steps toward change are meaningful progress. The scientific evidence on overthinking small mistakes and perfectionism has expanded dramatically in recent years, offering us unprecedented insights into how these patterns work in our brains and, crucially, how we can change them. A comprehensive meta-analysis conducted by a research institution, examining data from over 113,000 participants, found that perfectionist overthinking, particularly what scientists call mistake rumination, shows significant correlations with psychological distress. The effect sizes ranged from 0.38 to 0.43 for anxiety and depression, which in research terms represents a medium to large impact on our mental health. This means that the connection between overthinking mistakes and emotional suffering isn't just anecdotal, it's a robustly documented phenomenon that affects millions of people worldwide. Perhaps even more fascinating is what brain imaging studies have revealed about the neural mechanisms underlying this pattern. A research team using fMRI technology in 2024 discovered that when we engage in mistake rumination, specific brain networks become hyperactive and interconnected in problematic ways. Specifically, they found increased connectivity between the posterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in self-referential thinking, and areas like the inferior frontal gyrus and inferior temporal gyrus, which process emotional stimuli and language. This creates what researchers describe as a closed loop where thoughts about mistakes trigger emotional responses, which then reinforce more negative self-focused thinking, creating the exhausting cycle many of us know all too well. The encouraging news from this research is that targeted interventions can literally change these brain patterns. A replicated study from multiple universities showed that specialized therapy designed to address rumination created measurable changes in both self-reported overthinking and actual brain connectivity. The effect sizes were remarkably large: 0.84 for reducing rumination and 0.73 for changing brain connectivity patterns. This isn't just about thinking differently, it's about fundamentally rewiring the neural pathways that maintain the overthinking cycle. Joint research by several institutions in 2025 also revealed that mistake rumination acts as a critical mediator between perfectionism and psychological distress. This means that it's not perfectionism itself that causes the most suffering, but rather the tendency to mentally rehearse and replay mistakes that transforms perfectionist traits into anxiety and depression. It's important to note that current research suggests these patterns develop over time, often beginning in childhood or adolescence when we learn that mistakes might lead to criticism, rejection, or loss of love and approval. There's still much we don't fully understand about individual variations in how these patterns develop and persist, but what we do know is that they're not permanent. The brain's capacity for neuroplasticity, its ability to form new connections and weaken old ones, continues throughout our lives, meaning change is always possible. Now let's explore the practical methods that research has shown to be most effective in breaking free from the cycle of overthinking small mistakes. These aren't quick fixes or superficial techniques, but rather evidence-based approaches that create lasting change in how our brains process errors and imperfections. Please remember to try these within your comfortable limits and never force yourself beyond what feels manageable. The first method is called functional analysis, and it's a cornerstone of breaking the rumination habit. When you catch yourself overthinking a mistake, immediately grab a piece of paper or open a notes app and write down 4 things: the trigger or situation, your specific thoughts, the emotions you're experiencing, and what avoiding function the rumination might be serving. Research shows that rumination often masks deeper fears. You might be avoiding uncertainty about the future, potential criticism from others, or uncomfortable feelings of inadequacy. For example, if you're ruminating about stumbling over words during a presentation, the deeper fear might be that others will discover you're not as competent as they thought. By identifying these underlying fears, you begin to see rumination for what it really is: an avoidance strategy that paradoxically keeps you stuck in the very discomfort you're trying to escape. The second technique involves shifting from abstract to concrete thinking, and studies have shown this simple change can reduce rumination intensity by up to 40%. Practice this for just 10 minutes daily. When you notice yourself engaging in abstract worry thoughts like, "Why am I so incompetent?" or "What's wrong with me?" consciously shift to specific, concrete questions such as, "What exactly happened? What one small step could improve this situation?" or, "What would I tell a friend in this situation?" This isn't about positive thinking or denying the mistake occurred. It's about grounding your thoughts in reality rather than allowing them to spiral into catastrophic interpretations. Research indicates that abstract rumination activates different brain regions than concrete problem solving, and by practicing this shift consistently, you're literally training your brain to default to more helpful thinking patterns. The third method, if-then planning, has shown remarkable effectiveness in clinical trials for interrupting rumination cycles before they gain momentum. Create specific contingency plans for your common rumination triggers using this format. If I notice myself replaying a conversation, then I will engage in 3 minutes of focused breathing and name 5 things I can see around me. Other examples might include, if I start overthinking an email I sent, then I will stand up and do 10 jumping jacks, or, if I'm ruminating before bed, then I will write 3 things I'm grateful for. The key is to practice these plans consistently for at least 2 weeks, which research shows is typically enough time to establish the neural pathways that make the response automatic. Studies found that participants who used if-then planning showed significant reductions in rumination frequency and intensity, with benefits maintained at 6-month follow-up. The fourth approach is the approach versus avoidance technique, which directly addresses the avoidance function of rumination. When you notice overthinking beginning, pause and ask yourself, what meaningful action am I avoiding by staying in my head? Often, rumination keeps us from taking imperfect action that might risk failure or judgment. Set a timer for just 5 minutes and take one small step toward that avoided task, even if it's imperfect or incomplete. For instance, if you're ruminating about a mistake in a project, spend 5 minutes actually working on improving it rather than thinking about it. Research shows that replacing mental rehearsal with behavioral engagement disrupts the avoidance cycle and reduces rumination intensity. Start with low-stakes situations, perhaps reorganizing a drawer while ruminating about housework, and gradually work toward more challenging scenarios. The optimal frequency during initial training is 3 to 5 times daily, which can be reduced to as needed after about 4 weeks of consistent practice. Remember, these methods work best when practiced with self-compassion. If you find yourself struggling to implement them or notice your symptoms worsening, that's completely normal and nothing to be ashamed of. Some days will be harder than others, and progress rarely follows a straight line. If you're experiencing concerning symptoms or finding that rumination significantly interferes with your daily life, please consider consulting with a mental health professional who can provide personalized support. Don't blame yourself if you can't maintain these practices perfectly. Small changes truly are important progress, and every attempt to break the rumination cycle, successful or not, is training your brain for future success. To summarize what we discussed today, let me share the key points that can guide you toward freedom from overthinking small mistakes. First, mistake rumination is a modifiable brain pattern, not a fixed personality trait. Your brain can literally rewire itself with practice. Second, perfectionist overthinking acts as a mediator between your traits and psychological distress, meaning addressing the rumination itself is key to feeling better. Third, shifting from abstract worry to concrete thinking has been proven more effective than trying to think positively. Fourth, if-then plans create automatic interruption of overthinking cycles by establishing new neural pathways. Fifth, replacing mental rehearsal with behavioral engagement breaks the avoidance-based pattern that maintains rumination. Sixth, brain connectivity changes are measurable with targeted intervention, showing that this isn't just psychological but involves real biological change. Take your time with these insights and start with whatever feels most manageable for you. You might begin by simply noticing when rumination starts, without trying to change it yet. Or perhaps you'll try just one if-then plan this week. Remember, you've probably been overthinking mistakes for years, so it's completely reasonable that change will take time. What matters is that you now know change is possible, not through willpower or positive thinking alone, but through scientifically validated techniques that address the root mechanisms of rumination. You possess the neurological capacity to fundamentally rewire how your brain processes mistakes. This isn't wishful thinking or empty encouragement, it's a scientifically demonstrated fact backed by brain imaging studies and clinical trials. Your perfectionist overthinking once served a protective purpose, perhaps shielding you from criticism or helping you maintain standards that felt necessary for survival or acceptance. But you can now replace these patterns with healthier ones that preserve your values and standards while releasing the unnecessary suffering that comes from endlessly replaying small errors. Tomorrow, you can begin implementing even one of these practices, joining thousands of others who have transformed their relationship with mistakes from one of torment to one of growth and self-compassion. May your hearts feel a little lighter knowing that freedom from overthinking is not just possible, but within your reach. If today's content provided any support or insights, please hit the like button to help others find this information. Subscribe to Safe Haven Radio to continue learning about mental health together. Remember, seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness, and you deserve to live without the constant burden of perfectionist overthinking. Thank you for listening to Safe Haven Radio, and may you find peace with your beautiful, imperfect human self.